What up? What up? Are we live? Are we good? Happy hump day to all my sports fans, to Cowboys Nation, to my fellow bitches who love sports. It's late, but I've had a long ass day and I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. If you see me frequently looking to my right, it is because there's a television screen over here and I'm watching the Lakers make the Nuggets look stupid. I still cannot believe the Mavs let go of Luka. What? I still can't make it make sense. I still cannot. Um, but yeah, we're not going to talk too much about that tonight, unless something happened in the past couple hours that I don't know about. There's not a whole lot to talk about, but we're still going to have a good time and talk about a few of these Cowboys moves. So before I get too deep into all of that, real quick, an intro.
Queen bitch, supreme bitch, I'ma stay that bitch.
All right. So, as the intro says, I'm your host, Jazz Monet, and this is a special episode of Bitches Love Sports. It's not that special, actually, but every episode is special, especially these days where I somewhat struggle to find the time. But we're going to start off again with a little bit of TLDR. Last week, my TLDR was about some of the articles that I've been writing for Cowboys Wire, which is syndicated on USA Today. And I recently discovered Yahoo Sports. So shout out to those two platforms for featuring my work. This week, it comes from a different source. I was on TikTok and this guy made a video about a situation involving Xavier Worthy. So I'm gonna just talk about that for a little bit while people are filing in, and then we'll get into some of the other Cowboys related stuff and whatever else y'all want to talk about tonight. Absolutely get active in the chat, ask me questions, make comments, tell me what y'all want to talk about, and we'll go from there. But this Xavier Worthy situation, he made a video about it, and I saw the video and I left a comment. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna look into this because if you've been watching me for a while, I'll look into legal cases, lawsuits, stuff like that. It's not an issue. But before I actually address the situation involving Xavier Worthy, and I love and hate this mic stand. Like, it's got a lot of useful attachments, but also like it's just going to like keep falling. So pardon me. But before we get into the Xavier Worthy situation, I need to address this young man himself because once I started digging into the situation, the way that he decided to go about addressing it kind of pissed me off. So let me go ahead and share his video with y'all, and I'll send my message to him, and then I'll give y'all a little bit of insight on the situation since, spoiler alert, he didn't. Let's get this to the beginning.
You know what's funny about this whole Xavier Worthy thing? I don't hear a lot of women sports broadcasters chiming in on this topic, or at least the aftermath of the topic about the, girlfriend or ex-girlfriend lying, cheating, calling the police on him. No charges were brought against her for the false police report. Charges were dropped against Xavier Worthy. And two, the girl, she ain't just nobody. She's a track star. But I'm just saying, it's very quiet. I don't hear from my female constituents who are in the sports world about this. Maybe you guys are waiting for more information to come out, but it's a little too quiet. Just saying, you can hear a mouse piss on cotton. It's so quiet. Shoes on the other foot.
All right, so that's what he had to say about it. Now, I have so many things to say in response. First of all, young man, I don't even know your name. The name of the TikTok is KC Sports something. The reason why you might not have heard from any of your female constituents is because you don't follow any. I checked who you follow, and you don't follow any female sports content creators. You follow a couple of models, which I mean, nothing wrong with that. Models are dope. I follow a couple models. Cool. But yeah, maybe if you actually followed some female sports content creators, you might have heard somebody talk about this. Now, speaking from my own experience, I didn't even know about the Xavier Worthy situation until I saw this video. I didn't hear about the arrest, so I didn't hear about the charges being dismissed. And if you wanted to hear from a female sports content creator, you probably could have just reached out to one of us. I know I personally am very easy to find. Um, and I speak on topics like this all the time. Simple DM, a simple email saying, "Hey, I want to talk about this topic. Would you mind coming on my show? Would you mind making a video that I can respond to?" Whatever would have gotten you the response that you were looking for. But instead, you decide to make this like shady ass video as though women are purposefully ignoring this topic. And if there are some that are, I can't speak to that. All I know is that I didn't know about it. Once I started looking into it, I saw that major platforms are covering it. I saw it on ESPN. The arrest actually happened outside of Austin in Georgetown. If you're familiar with Texas and the geography of Texas, Georgetown is like an hour or so northeast ish of Austin. So there were write ups about it in the Austin Statesman. Like basically, if you Google Xavier Worthy arrest or anything like that, you can find a lot of information on it. And like, I know you said this young woman is a track star, but even after investigating this whole situation, I found like no information on her being a track star or whatever she does. So I don't know if she's a big track star. Maybe she's not actually a track star. Maybe she's just a track runner or a track athlete. Um, but I say all that to say, if you want to get a response from a certain segment, first check and see who is covering it. Check and see if you can get them to cover it, and then maybe just ask instead of being an asshole about it. Just saying. So, as far as this case itself, it is interesting. It's one of those things that if you've watched me for a while, you know it kind of frustrates me to cover. And the reason why it frustrates me is because of something that I mention a lot, which is the fact that when you have these situations where women weaponize the Me Too movement, or they weaponize their position as women that allows them to press charges against a man in power or bring false accusations against a man in power, it hurts the women who actually do go through these things. And there are women who actually are, for example, abused by men, assaulted by men, have reasons to press charges for various reasons against men. But anytime you have these situations where there are women who um, decide to, sorry, I was looking at a notification from StreamYard. It says it can't post comments from some destinations. So, quick disclaimer, if you're on Twitter, come over to the YouTube side to make sure I see your comments. Otherwise, I might not see them. It's very hit or miss with Twitter. And this alert might mean that Twitter is a destination that is not getting comments. Anyway, but yeah, basically, anytime women are found to be dishonest, that is used against the women who might be honest. So it's like a woman might be telling the truth, and then somebody will be like, well, women lie. And then it's like you have examples like this that show that women lie. And so it's like it's just not good for anybody. So essentially what happened in the situation is Xavier Worthy was arrested in Georgetown. I'll read you a part of an article from ESPN. It says Worthy was arrested Friday. This was this past Friday. This is very recent. Worthy was arrested Friday and held in a county jail on a charge of assault on a family or household member in which their breath was impeded or choking in common terms. So essentially, this young woman accused him of choking her out. And it was domestic violence charges, essentially, that were brought up against him. In a statement, Worthy's attorneys, Chip Lewis and Sam Bassett, said their client was innocent of the charge against him. They said the allegation was made by a woman who had been living in Worthy's home, basically his girlfriend. Apparently, he had proposed to her at some point. So, like, they were engaged. And that she had been asked to leave multiple times over the past 2 weeks upon discovery of her infidelity. So, all that is like semi legalese for like, he was dating this woman, they were living together, he proposed to her, they got engaged, and then he found out that she was cheating, and he was like, you got to get out my house, and she was like, no. And then something happened, and she accused him of choking her. Now, the reason why I say something happened is because one of the things that the young man I addressed earlier mentioned, he was like, he mentioned something about the police not filing a report for false charges. In order for that to happen, there would have to be an investigation. There would have to be an investigation that shows that the charges are false in order for her to be charged for, or in order for her to get in trouble for false charges. And even if there is some evidence to support that the charges were false, in a lot of cases, someone has to still bring charges against her. So, for example, we talked about the Dak Prescott situation not too long ago, where a woman filed a civil suit in which she alleged that he had assaulted her, right? Um, Now, fast forward, there was a lot of stuff that happened in that case, a lot of stuff that actually related to legal proceedings, not any new discoveries regarding the event, right? But essentially, she ended up having sanctions against her for frivolous pleadings, right? So that's basically a legal way of saying the judge was like, not only do I see the allegations that you're presenting as probably false, because there were this case was addressed in two different counties, and neither one of them decided to pursue it as a criminal situation, right? But the judge was like, not only are these allegations probably false, but also the way that you're going about just throwing all these documents at him and just trying to stick something on him, because eventually that's what her attorneys were trying to do. They were just like, we're going to get him with something to make him pay, right? And the judge was basically like, stop playing around in my court. And I don't know what the punishment was because I was looking for those documents, couldn't find them. But I say that to say, had it not been for Dak's attorneys basically filing, what's the word? Not an anti-suit, a countersuit. Had it not been for Dak's attorneys filing a countersuit, that might not have happened. It might have played out a completely different way. It's not something that the courts and law enforcement always will just naturally do. It's just be like, okay, let's find out if these allegations are false and then punish this person for it. So in this situation, the district attorney was like, we're not even going to pursue this. So whatever they found in their initial questioning, in their initial investigation, they decided not to pursue it at all. So we're not going to find out for sure if Xavier Worthy is innocent or guilty. Although if the district attorney decided not to pursue it, then more than likely there wasn't going to be enough evidence to find him guilty of anything. But there's not going to be a guilty or innocent verdict because there won't be a trial because they're not investigating it. But that also means they're not going to investigate whether or not her charges were true or false. Um, but it does kind of point to the idea that they're false. So anybody who wants to say that they believe Xavier Worthy is innocent or say that they don't believe it, believe the charges that were brought against him, believe the stories that were brought against him, all right, you're well within your rights because the district attorney doesn't seem to believe it either. So whatever. Um, but yeah, essentially that's the situation. And also that might be another situation, another reason why you haven't heard anyone talk about it is because it happened so quickly. It's like he was arrested and then everything was basically dismissed, dropped. Um, the district attorney said relatively quickly that they weren't going to look into it. So while it was covered by ESPN on their website, I don't think it was covered on any morning shows or made any major headlines or anything like that. I think had it gone to trial or if it was a situation where I know the NFL's rules on suspending a player for inappropriate conduct are a little bit looser than the standards the district attorney might have for investigating a situation, right? So if it led to that, because Xavier Worthy plays for the Chiefs. So if it turned out that a Chiefs player was going to be suspended at the beginning of the season for anything related to this incident, I'm pretty sure we'd hear more about it. But right now it's like, okay, he was arrested. District attorney was like, we're not even going to take this seriously for real. And now what he's dealing with is a situation. And now this is the part that I do hope gets covered more, only because I feel like it's one of those things where when it comes to professional athletes and relationships, everything tends to be very one-sided. And I'm trying to break this habit that I have of like pausing and thinking a lot while I answer questions. So I'm trying, y'all. I was looking at my last live stream and I was just like, damn, I stop and think a lot. So pardon me. But essentially, what Xavier Worthy is dealing with now is, and actually, let me just go ahead and pull up the article and tell y'all what happened, because this was a lot. And it was a lot in terms of things that she's done to him. And hopefully this is the link that has it. Okay. So this is also from the ESPN article. This article is titled "Woman Who Accused Chiefs Worthy Granted Protective Order," and it's just listed as an Associated Press article. But about halfway through, it says, um, she, referring to the woman who pressed charges against Xavier Worthy, she has refused to vacate the residence and made a number of extortive efforts prior to resorting to this baseless allegation against Mr. Worthy, the lawyer said. The complainant further destroyed a room in the residence, scratched Mr. Worthy's face, and ripped out parts of his hair, which there is photographic evidence of. Worthy told law enforcement at the time of the incident he did not want to press charges against the complainant, which is crazy to me, because I'm like, there was also another article that said she stole items from his home. So they were living together, and so we don't know what was stolen, if it was something that she thought was hers, or if they had gone half on any appliances or furniture, whatever. That's not clear. But it was clear that she stole items from the home and ended up returning some of them. But even without the theft, I'm like, scratching his face, pulling out parts of his hair, that is abuse. Like, that is domestic violence. That is one of the situations that we should, like, definitely call out for what it is. And so that's probably one part of this story that I'm a little bit disappointed isn't being covered more, because that is one thing that the young man on TikTok, while he annoyed the shit out of me with what he said in the beginning, I will say, if it turned out that Xavier Worthy had scratched his girlfriend's face and pulled her hair out, that definitely would have made highlight headlines, right? But because it happened to him, I don't know if people just don't feel like it's worth taking seriously, if it's worth reporting, or maybe he didn't want to report it, just like he didn't want to press charges. Maybe he didn't want to make headlines with it. I don't know. But I do think that it's very necessary to acknowledge that domestic violence can go all ways. Sometimes it's one way, sometimes it's two people abusing each other, and sometimes it happens in very unexpected ways where a professional athlete is being abused. And that is something that we should also take seriously. So he's not pressing charges, so there's not much else to say about it. The main reason why I'm bringing it to light is because I said that I would look into it. I said that I would talk about it. So I'm talking about it. And yeah, that's all there is to it. So I know I said that's a TLDR, but that wasn't very short. My bad. Splenda P. Vela says, I'm late. What did I miss? Not much. I just did a quick TLDR about a situation involving Xavier Worthy. If you want to learn more about it, Google Xavier Worthy arrest. Um, I hope he's okay, honestly. That sounds like a lot to deal with. One thing I will say, I have a lot of guy friends, and several of them have talked to me about situations where they didn't use these words. And I don't know if it's because they didn't realize what was happening to them, or if they were in denial about what happened to them. But I've had multiple guy friends describe situations to me where they were clearly abused or raped by women. Um, and so it's something that does happen, and something that is not discussed nearly as often as it probably should be. And I say that just based on the number of men that I've heard talk about it, and the amount of support it seems like would benefit them. Um, so yeah, that's why I say I hope he's okay. Like, I understand him. Well, no, I don't even understand him not pressing charges. Honestly, I don't understand him not pressing charges. I know that's a very common thing, but I never understand it when it happens. But he has decided not to press charges. So all I can say is that I hope he's okay. I hope this is something that he can bounce back from, get past, and hopefully this doesn't ruin future relationships for him, because he's kind of a young guy, and that's a lot to go through at this age. And just a message to anybody, not only women, but men, anybody. Like, if you get to the point where you feel like you need to put those kinds of hands on the person that you're with, you need to destroy their property. Because, like, real shit, the number of videos and the amount of content that's out there about people committing whole ass felonies because they're with somebody who cheated on them or who won't propose to them or who won't commit to them or whatever. It's fucking ridiculous. That shit is not normal. It's toxic as fuck. Um, you might have a mental condition if you feel like that shit is appropriate. And one of my homeboys, he was like, well, some people, they just don't like to entertain the idea of ending a relationship. It's like they get in a relationship, they feel like it's supposed to last forever. And so even when things get like that, they'll just try to make it work. And I'm like, that is not making it work. Like trying to run somebody over with your car is not making it work. like busting somebody's windows on their car, vandalizing their home, abusing them, tearing out their hair and scratching their face is not making it work. Like the fuck? I don't know. This shit is sick. Anyway, let's get back to ball. Willie says Xavier Worthy needs to be ashamed of himself. Accountability matters. I'm gonna assume that you didn't hear anything that I just said. Because from what I read, I don't think he has anything to be ashamed of. Um, but I do hope that everything works out and that he's okay. Um, Maybe you're one of the people who that young man on TikTok was talking about who heard the first part of the story and believed it and didn't hear anything after that, where the district attorney decided not to pursue the case. And there's no evidence that this young woman is telling the truth. And there's actually more evidence that she abused him in a pretty extreme way than that he actually did anything to her. So that's just a recap. Rewind if you need to. I kind of went over all of it. But yeah, what are we going to talk about today? Like I said, unless something happened in the last couple hours, there's really nothing new to bring up. If something did happen in the last couple hours, feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll be glad to go over it. But what I thought it would be fun to do would be to go down the list of acquisitions that the Cowboys have made so far, and just kind of list, if I could ask this particular person one question, what would it be? And I didn't get through the whole list. So maybe we'll do this for a couple of episodes, or extend it or something. But I didn't get through the whole list, but I have a few of them. So I have a few of the players that the Cowboys have. And what I would ask them if I could ask them one question. Now, y'all know me. Y'all know I'd be busy. I haven't done a ton of film study, like a little bit. But typically when I find out about the player, the order I go in terms of finding out more about them is stats. And then based on the stats, I might look at, like, are there any outlier games or outlier events? Or might look at injury history. So like for Miles Sanders, when I realized that there was like this huge ass drop off from when he was with the Eagles to when he went to the Panthers, the first thing that I looked at, I was like, okay, was there an injury that caused him to underperform a little bit? Like, what happened there? So that's just an example. So for several of these players, I basically just kind of started looking into them, trying to find out who they are. And from that, I was like, okay, if I could ask this player one question based on this is one question that I would ask. So we're going to start with Mr. Paris Campbell. Now, Paris Campbell, he's one of those people that when I looked him up, I was kind of like, not impressed. So hold on. Sorry, this link is not working. And there's been a mixed bag in terms of who the Cowboys have acquired, right? We've got some people who seem like, okay, they're camp body, you need numbers. And then there's some people who are like, okay, this person could be on the bench. And then you've got a couple who are like, okay, they might compete for a regular spot. So yeah, the Paris Campbell was with the Indianapolis Colts from 2019 to 2022. He was with the New York Giants in 2023, the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024, and now with the Dallas Cowboys. And because he was a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, he's technically a Super Bowl winner, But his career stats, keep in mind, his career started in 2019. Career stats: 123 receptions, 1,117 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, and 366 return yards. That's his entire career. So when I saw that, I was just like, did he even play? What happened? Like, what happened to where this guy just did it in his entire career what, some of the receivers that we like will do in like a single season? And so one of the first things that came up was injury history. Um, so there was an article on beaconjournal.com that described his injuries. It says in 2020, Campbell suffered torn knee ligaments, MCL and PCL, in the second game and missed the rest of the season. As a rookie in 2019, he had a pulled hamstring, a sports hernia, a broken hand, and a broken foot. He underwent 3 surgeries and missed all but 7 games. And I want to say that I read somewhere that in 2021, he hurt his foot again. So a lot going on with that. But the one question that I had for Mr. Campbell is related to an article that was published on NFL.com. And it's an article in which he's quoted as saying, from the outside looking in, people say, oh, he can't stay healthy. Excuse my language, but to hell with that. I know who I am at the end of the day. I know what type of player I am. I know why I was drafted here. And the coaching staff room, they know. Mr. Campbell, my one question to you is, what kind of player are you? And I know this article was written a couple of years ago, so maybe your perspective has evolved. But the title of this article is Colts receiver Paris Campbell ignoring injury history, focus on proving himself in contract year. How do you ignore an injury history like that, sir? Especially when it's combined with low production. It's not a situation, and please don't take this personally. Like, I don't mean to make it sound like I hate you already and I don't even know you, haven't seen what you might do with the Cowboys. But to me, it is wild to have production that low and an injury history that varied. It's not even like an injury that just kept coming back. Like, you didn't hurt everything: a hand, a foot, a knee, a sports hernia. Like, how do you expect us to ignore all that within the context of your low production? So when you say you know what kind of player you are, when you say that the coaches know who you are, um, when are you going to let us know? When are you going to tell us who you are? Can you describe for Cowboys Nation and people who might be wondering what kind of player you are? There was another article where he went into well, I won't say he went into more detail, but it was another quote. Um, and he said, from the outside looking in on my career, it's been a battle. And I must say, sir, with those injuries, it can't just be from the outside looking in. There's no way you don't experience this yourself as an actual battle. Give me 1 second, y'all. Okay, I'm back. But this is what he said. From the outside looking in on my career, it's been a battle. There's been highs, which I'd like to know about. There's been lows. There's been a lot of lows. Okay, that's honest. I've dealt with a lot of injuries. The thing that I tell people, especially kids, is you've got to go through something to get something. Mr. Campbell, you've been through a lot of something. And if you're going to get something, I'd love for you to get it with the Cowboys. Anybody who's a Dallas Cowboy, I want to see them succeed. I want them to win because that means the team is probably doing well. So I'm not wishing ill on you or anything like that. But yeah, I would say that you've got a lot of questions to answer when it comes to your injury history and proving yourself in spite of that history. So, welcome to the Dallas Cowboys. Good luck to you, sir. Wish you all the best. Good health. As a matter of fact, cheers to your health. Okay. Next player we've got up is Mr. Dakota Shepley. Apparently, there was a point in time where Dakota Shepley, um, did a little bit of acting, a little stunt work, and I'm just curious what happened there. So I'm just gonna pull up a video and let y'all watch it real quick. And then we'll just kind of discuss this and within the context of everything that happened since then after y'all watch the video. But this is kind of a cool ass video. So this is Mr. Dakota Shepley, a recent acquisition by the Dallas Cowboys, and this is something that he did back in when was this? 2018.
What's your character's name?
It's Omega Red.
Omega Red.
Omega Red.
You're gonna go through makeup, or are you just gonna kind of be as is?
Yeah. No, I skipped it for today. Yeah.
What are your powers?
I got carbonantium through my veins, kind of the same. I'm like the Russian Wolverine. I let off like pheromones so people can't get close to me or they'll die. Super strong, super agile.
We'll check.
Something to keep me busy, in between cuts.
Rolling camera.
It's your move.
Rolling. Ready and action.
I don't know how to play chess.
I can tell.
All right. So that was Mr. Shepley as Omega Red, which was supposed to be a villain on Deadpool 2, which was released in 2018, just to give you a little bit of a timeline for that. Now, if you look into this, because apparently every team that he goes to, somebody discovers this and creates a story about it. So there's a little bit of information about what was going on in terms of his career at the time. But apparently, what happened with Deadpool 2 is Omega Red was supposed to have a bigger role in the film, but then the film ended up getting a bigger budget. They made some changes, and that villain was essentially cut out of the movie. Like, if you look in the background in that movie, you can kind of see him in the background. But in terms of him having a bigger role, that part just never came to fruition. But he did that. He did some stunt work in 2018, or for movies that ended up being released in 2018. So my one question for Dakota Shepley is, what exactly happened there? Why didn't you stick with the movie thing? Um, I'm just curious what would make someone choose the NFL over show business or not try to do both, because it seems like ever since that little stint, he hasn't really gone back to show business or the movie business. So I'm just curious, how did he feel about playing Omega Red? How did he feel about the character being cut? Um, if he had the opportunity to do it again, would he? Just asking, since it seems like he hasn't done a lot of that work since then. Um, and is like, I wonder, just does he ever dress up as a character? Like, I like cosplay. Is that something that he's into, or is that just like, okay, this is just for the movie? But I thought that was like a little interesting tidbit about him. Next on the list, we have Dante Fowler Jr. Now, Cowboys Nation is a little bit more familiar with Dante Fowler Jr. So there's not a lot in terms of his background to discuss. One thing I will mention about his background is the fact that he is somewhat known for being a quote unquote Dan Quinn guy, which apparently is a label that Cowboys Nation has given people or certain players who they feel like were selected by Dan Quinn, and who had a special purpose on the defense because of how Dan Quinn wanted them to be used, and or had a special relationship with Dan Quinn. So he has this reputation, this label, as being a Dan Quinn guy. He was with the Washington Commanders, where Dan Quinn is currently the head coach. But before he came over to the Dallas Cowboys, on Twitter, on X, my bad, he made a post that states only, "The disrespect, I can't take it anymore." And a lot of people interpreted that to be related to something that was happening with the Commanders. But that's my one question for Dante Fowler Jr. is, who are you talking to there? Because it's easy to assume that it's the Commanders, right? But if you really were a Dan Quinn guy and Dan Quinn was down for you, and this one season that he had with the Commanders is actually one of his better seasons. 10.5 sacks. That's the only stat that I remember, but he had some really good numbers. It was like, I should pull it up. This is why I need to be better with my show notes, because I get ready to talk about stuff like this and then I'm just like 10.5 sacks and some other shit. Hold on, give me 1 second. But he had a good year. Dante Fowler Jr. stats. We'll just go with what's listed on ESPN. So, according to ESPN, during the 2024 season with the Washington Commanders, Mr. Dante Fowler Jr. had he played in 17 total games, had 39 total sacks, 25 of them were solo, 10.5 sacks, 1 interception that he returned for 67 yards. And that's pretty much all that's significant. So, yeah, when it comes to disrespect, I just can't see him being disrespected, with these kinds of numbers from people who are with the Washington Commanders organization. So if you don't mind, just be a little bit more specific. I'm curious. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are curious. Um, I'm thinking personally that it's not actually a situation that happened with the Washington Commanders. I'm thinking that it has more to do with just recognition by the league. Just maybe somebody wrote something, somebody said something, somebody felt like he didn't deserve to be paid, he didn't deserve to have a good deal. I feel like it's something a lot more general than that something went wrong with someone specific to the Commanders organization. That is my inkling. But yeah, go ahead and spill the tea if you like, Mr. Fowler. All right. And the last person I have on this list is Mr. Miles Sanders. Now, if you follow me on TikTok, I actually did kind of a video on this because someone actually responded to my video on Chauncey Golston and they were talking about Miles Sanders. And so I felt the need to respond because they made a comment that was something like, Miles Sanders isn't even a good camp body. And I'm just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, to say somebody is not even a good camp body, that's kind of an extreme remark. Because to be a camp body, like, you don't even have to be good by NFL standards. Like, you literally just need to be a body who's capable of being at practices and executing what they tell you to execute. So that's kind of a major insult. And so, like, my first point in that video was that we got to stop doing that as fans. Like, when we're not excited about an acquisition, we're not excited about a signing, it immediately turns to insults and trying to trash a player. And I'm like, Miles Sanders has had a rough couple of seasons, but let's not act like he wasn't that dude with the Philadelphia Eagles for like 4 seasons, right? So a few of the things that I mentioned in the video, he came out as a rookie, like came out the gate hot. What was it? Over 800 yards rushing, over 500 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns in each category. Fucking crushed it his rookie year. So that right there tells you he has skills and abilities. But things happen over time, and there are a lot of things that can affect production, especially for a running back. So anyway, crazy rookie year, crazy good in terms of what he was able to do. And actually his entire time with the Philadelphia Eagles, he actually did really well. He didn't leave the Eagles because he wasn't useful or because he didn't have talent or skills. From what I read, what it seems like happened is that the Eagles offense changed a little bit, so his role changed. They started passing the ball more. There was more RPO. There was more screen plays, just things that didn't require him to play the same role that he played, for example, his rookie year, where he was just putting up crazy stats, rushing and receiving. And so he came to the conclusion that he wasn't going to have the role with the Eagles that he ultimately wanted to have on a team that he was on. And he also seemed to have come to the conclusion, whether just through observations or through conversations, that they weren't going to pay him what he felt like he was worth because of that diminished role. So in other words, he's like, these are the skills and abilities that I have. Based on this, I deserve to be paid this much. But the Eagles are only using me in this way. And so the way that they're using me, it doesn't it's minimal in terms of what I'm capable of, but they want to pay me for how they're using me, not for what I'm capable of. So if I want to get paid what I feel like I'm worth, I need to go somewhere else. That's what it seemed to have boiled down to. And so he went to the Panthers. And then his numbers production took a nosedive. Something else I mentioned in that video was that when it comes to that kind of thing happening, because that's what a lot of people are pointing to when it comes to not being excited about this signing. And I can understand you not being excited. Be cautious, be cautiously optimistic by all means, because we don't know for sure what happened. But one thing that I will say is when it comes to running backs that we like, and this can be on a case by case individual basis. But as individuals, when it comes to running backs that we like, we will come up with a whole list of reasons why they're not producing. Oh, it's the O line. Oh, it's the scheme. Oh, it's that the owner or the GM or the coach doesn't like them. Oh, there's politics at play. Oh, well, they got injured. Like, we'll come up with so many reasons to justify lack of production, them falling off in some way, besides just assuming, oh, this person was good and now they suck, which is not a thing that really happens unless someone does suffer some type of injury, whether physical or mental. Because, like, yes, an ACL tear can affect production, so can concussions or depression or addiction, right? Um, so usually, if it's not one of those things, there are other things that can affect production. Um, and so that was something that I wanted to look into a little bit more. So far from what I look from what I've seen and from what I've heard, from what I've read, there seems to be a strong case for the idea that the Panthers offensive line um, didn't do Mr. Sanders any favors. We'll put it that way. I haven't heard that from him, but from people who study the team, study their film, that seems to be for the people who don't seem to be on this train of, oh, he was good and now he just sucks. That seems to be the case that they're making. And it seems to be pretty consistent, which makes me believe like there's some substance there. Because if it was just a bunch of people trying to make excuses for him, you would hear more varied reasons. Like some people would say it's the O-line. Some people would say, oh, it's the coaches, whatever. But it seems to be pretty consistent where people are like, yeah, no, he's still a good player, but that offensive line just wasn't working with him. The play calling wasn't working with him. So I'm just like, okay, I'll buy it. We'll wait and see. Because one of two things is going to happen. He'll either be mediocre and he'll be on the bench. Great. We need people to support the starters. We need depth, right? Or he'll come to the Cowboys and he'll be in the right circumstances to actually perform better. And then we've lucked into a really good running back that just nobody believed in. So the Cowboys got him. Um, so my one question for Mr. Sanders, I would want to hear from him what he feels like affected his production. Do you feel like it's the O-line? Do you feel like it's something else? Because he did suffer a few injuries, but most of his injuries did not take him off the field for any significant amount of time. But just because a player is playing doesn't mean they're playing at 100%. As a matter of fact, it's very rare that we see players at 100%. Very, very rare. More rare than I think people realize. Um, and so he might have missed like a couple of practices, maybe a game or two here or there, but we don't really know what kind of pain he was playing through. Now, in 2024, he missed like 8 games because of what some sources say was a foot injury, some sources say was an ankle sprain, but from what I read, by the end of the season, he was cleared to play again, which means by the time OTAs, training camps, preseason, all that comes around, he should be in a good position to where we can see what he's capable of and what he's worth. So there's that. I don't have any concerns in terms of his health right now. But I really am curious what led to that drop off in production, which seems to perfectly coincide with him switching teams, which is another reason why I believe it's the O-line, because it's not like he started to fall off while he was with the Eagles. They changed the offense, which did affect some of the ways that he contributes, but he didn't just start like playing bad while he was still with the Eagles. It's literally like, oh, he's with the Eagles, he's dope, he's doing his thing. He goes to the Panthers. what the fuck happened? Like yards per carry dropped by like 25%. Like, okay, where did he go? Um, and then of course the Panthers disappointed because they're like paying this man $25 million a year and he's not doing what they expect him to do. But that's the thing about acquiring a player and paying them that much money. Um, as an organization, you got to do your part too. So if it was the O-line, if it was the coaching, um, then if you're going to pay a player $25 million, there are still things that you need to do in order to put them into a position to succeed. So there's that. So yeah, those are the players that I got to so far. Those are the questions that I had for them. I'm gonna take a quick look at your comments, and I think we'll address one more thing, and then I'll sign off because it's late and I want to go to bed. I got to get up early, but like I said earlier, I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. Willie says Jerry needs to stop being cheap and do the right thing by paying free agents. Cooper Kupp would have been the right fit for this team. Oh boy, Willie. You say stuff like that. Did you see how much they're paying Cooper Kupp? I don't even remember what the exact number was, but I know it was enough for me to be like, the Cowboys were never going to pay that. And this is one situation where I'm glad they didn't. Um, Cooper Kupp is no scrub. I'll give him that. But you got to be reasonable. So I wish him the best of luck. Congratulations to him on getting paid, but I have yet to hear anybody say like, "Oh yeah, the Cowboys should have given up that money to get him." Like, nah, not. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can find it real quick. Cooper Kupp deal, 3-year, $45 million contract. Cowboys were not doing that, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I think there are other ways to find a good fit. I think there are other ways to find someone who can contribute to the offense, who can be a number two to CeeDee Lamb without paying someone in his position $45 million or 15 million a year, I should say. So yeah, I'm not mad at it. That there are a lot of reasons to be upset with Jerry Jones for being cheap. And I would not say that that's really at the top of my list. You can use it as an example because, like, I guess in the grand scheme of things, like, I'm trying to think, do I feel like 15 million is a lot? Like, it's not compared to like the starters, but for like a number two or for what most people anticipated Cooper Kupp would contribute, I'm just like, it's a lot. I don't know. I feel like there are people making arguments either way, but I personally don't feel a way about it. Once I found out what the deal was, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I see why the Cowboys bowed out of that one. Chris Glover says, do you believe the Cowboys have done enough in free agency to truly go best player available in the draft? Yes. Well, no. I think they might do more. I think they are in a position to where they could go best player available. I think the word enough is very subjective, right? Because there still are a couple of splash signings that they could make. You know, there's still a couple of positions that they could fill. But the thing is, it looks like they've done a lot of work on the defensive side in terms of free agency, which means they might be playing the draft and develop game on the offensive side. So if that's how they're segmenting it, where it's like, all right, Eberflus has enough experience as a coach, as a coordinator, to where he knows what he needs in a player. He knows what he needs for his defense, so we can go out and look for players who are already exhibiting the kind of traits, the kinds of skills that he's looking for. And we can go and get those guys based on what we know, based on what we can already see. Whereas on the offensive side of the ball, we've got a newer coach, someone who's not as familiar, who seems to have a good idea of what he wants, which was kind of vague. What did he say? He said essentially that he wanted to run the ball and be aggressive, which is like, of course, that's what every offensive coordinator says. That's what every fan wants from the Cowboys offense, right? But that is a little bit more vague. And so if they're going to go best player available and it's going to end up being players that are on the offensive side of the ball, then I do feel like they're playing this the right way. So I'm really not mad at how they're going about it. It looks like they're doing a lot to add depth, to add rotational pieces, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which I think is essential because it's especially on the defensive line. Eberflus likes his guys to be very physical. And last season, Osa did like more snaps than he's ever done. And while he's known for being durable, for not missing games, for not getting injured, I think you don't necessarily want to roll the dice on that if you don't have to. So if you can add depth in positions, if you can add people who can, sub in for him when the team is up or when he needs a break, and you can do the same thing for other positions, considering how physical he expects them to be, then I think that's a good plan. I think that's a good way to go about it. So, adding depth, adding rotational pieces, bringing in some camp bodies to make sure that these guys get some good reps in at training camp and whatnot. I think those are all good moves. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you bring in some guys that you can draft and develop. Maybe some guys who you think can contribute, even if they're not starters, even if they're not doing like a significant number of snaps, but when they are on the field, they are contributing, they are making a difference. I actually like them going about it that way. And we'll see how the rest of free agency plays out. Because we also have to think that like sometimes the Cowboys will make moves during the season for free agency. So there might be somebody that they've got their eye on that they're like, yeah, we need to, pick this guy up um midway through the season when they have that whole or before that whole window closes. So they might do more, but no, I feel like going BPA, they're in a good position to do that right now. Um, and we also got to think, like, I think sometimes as fans, we think about what we would want for the Dallas Cowboys in order for them to be invincible, in order for them to not lose any games, in order for them to overcome every opponent. They might be looking at it from like, okay, how can we set this roster up to hopefully win 10 games? How can we set this roster up to hopefully win 12 games? Because they just restructured Dak's contract, which means unless they got something up their sleeve or they know something about the cap numbers, they got a crystal ball they read in the future, come 2028 or so, they're going to have some issues with the salary cap in terms of bringing people in. So whatever they want to do in terms of achieving success, in terms of putting Shoddy in the best position to win, in terms of helping Dak see some kind of significant postseason victory while he's still around and still playing, they got a couple of seasons to make that shit happen, So from that perspective, I'm like, yeah, I think they're trying to be strategic. And while I would like to see some more big name signings, some more splash signings, I don't think that what they're doing is terrible. Um, I think they're doing okay. And we just got to be patient and see how things play out. All right. It's a quiet night in the chat. Nothing wrong with that. Like I said, it's Wednesday night. It's late. I get it. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. The last thing I'm gonna chime in on is some more non-Cowboys news. It's something that actually a couple of my favorite people on ESPN spoke about today. Especially Mina Kimes. Mina Kimes was on Around the Horn today and she spoke about what happened. So Jackie Robinson, as we know, helped integrate, or I shouldn't even say helped. He was essential in integrating Major League Baseball. But he also served in the Army. And there was a situation earlier today where mention of him on the Department of Defense website was removed. Now, I will say it was put back. It was put back. I don't know if a lot of people know that part because a lot of time, a lot of the occasions when it was talked about today, it was before it was put back. So it was taken down, kind of created an uproar, and then it was put back. And that part happened after everybody kind of did all their segments and all their shows. So the thing about it being taken down is that it was taken down because of supposedly the DEI initiative that our current administration is implementing. And so apparently they felt like Jackie Robinson's story was an example of DEI. And even though it was a story about what he did in the military, and some of the things that he did as a Black man in the military, where the racial tensions were very high, they felt like it wasn't worthy to be mentioned on the Department of Defense website. And even though it was put back, from what I understand, it was put back with like a DI disclaimer or something of that nature, which I haven't looked into. And so the thing that bugged me about it was people's responses to this situation. And the idea that DEI is a divisive thing. So I'm not going to pretend to be like a Jackie Robinson expert, like, breaking down the history like the way Mina Kimes did. I did repost her video. So if you want to check it out on X, just go to my profile. I reposted it. Obviously, you can go to her profile and take a look at it. So this is less about Jackie Robinson and what he did throughout history, and more so about the actions that were taken to remove mention of him from the page. And I'm mentioning it because this is also something that I feel like you're starting to see a little bit of in the sports world. And let me explain what I mean. When it comes to DEI initiatives, erasing history, rewriting history, it affects not only minorities, but also women. And when it comes to women, that's the part that I see affecting sports, because it's not going to happen overnight. But I'm telling you, and I posted a video about this too. Things like Title IX, they may not be around forever. It's a little bit harder to get rid of Title IX because it was actually passed into law. It wasn't just an executive order that can be undone with another executive order. But when it comes to what we're seeing with NIL, the way revenue sharing is happening in sports, women are going to really have to, especially women athletes, are going to have to start advocating for themselves. So back to the response to Jackie Robinson, seeing so many people refer to mention of him on the Department of Defense website as being divisive just because he was a Black man who accomplished certain things, it was really concerning to me, because there seems to be a lack of understanding of why sometimes people in minority groups are celebrated. It's not about, let's celebrate this person because they're Black and we feel like being Black and doing something is better than being white and doing something. It's not like, oh, we're going to celebrate women because we don't want to celebrate men. What it is that the history of this country, or in the history of this country, there have been so many hurdles for minorities and women to overcome, that when they do something, it's worthy of being celebrated as something separate, because for them to do the same thing as what a white or male counterpart did, they had to overcome a lot more in order to do the same things. And so when it comes to minorities, a lot of times people want to stop at slavery, but it didn't stop at slavery. Like, even after emancipation, there were so many situations that stopped Black people from getting an education, stopped them from taking on certain types of work that didn't involve agriculture. Even when you fast forward and Black people are like, all right, y'all want to be segregated, we're going to set up our freemen's towns over here, we're going to have our own economy, our own industries. And those towns were like burned down and destroyed, people murdered, just because they were like, we still want to thrive, even though y'all want nothing to do with us, but we'll do it over here. We won't bother y'all, And Tulsa is the most popular example of this, but that's not the only town that happened to. This happened over a couple of decades in cities all across America. You got things like the Black tax, right? Where there was a gold rush happening, people moving to California. But when Blacks and foreigners went over there, they literally had to pay an extra tax just to live. Not even for not for a special house, for a special car, just like, oh, you Black, you got to pay to be here. You got to pay extra to be here. Like, I know we all over here mining for gold, but if you want to do it too, like, yeah, you're going to have to pay up. So just all these things that made things harder for minorities. Recently, I was on Facebook and I saw where someone posted a video about women and the fact that it was just like literally a couple of days, a couple of days. It feels like a couple of decades ago that women were able to establish their own lines of credit and bank accounts without basically getting permission from a man. Um, or even women who became lawyers. There were certain ways they had to dress. I was talking to somebody that as a black woman growing up, one of the things that I had to deal with was basically being forced to get relaxers in my hair because my grandma grew up at a time where it literally was a problem for black women to wear their natural hair in the workplace. And so it just became a habit for all of us to have to get our hair relaxed so that it would be straighter, which led to a lot of issues: hair loss, alopecia, hell, fucking low self-esteem. It would be like, hey, this is how my hair just grows. I'm gonna style it and I'm gonna show up to the workplace, neat, clean, good hygiene. Just, it's a fro or it's curly. And then being like, nah, you can't work here looking like that. Looking like what? Looking like you're black. What? um, and so I say all this to say, like, these are just like a few examples of just like when it comes to simple things like serving one's country, like holding a job, like, even though now the NFL is what, like 75%, 80% black when it comes to players, there was a time where black men weren't allowed to play football. They weren't allowed to attend the schools that football was being played at first, because these were Ivy League schools. They weren't allowed to be part of the NFL. There was a time they weren't allowed to be part of the NBA. Um, so all these things that are being celebrated, it's not like, oh, we don't like white people, so we're going to celebrate black people doing these things. We don't like men, so we're going to celebrate women doing these things. It's really an acknowledgement that, like, yo, despite all the things that you had to overcome, all the hurdles that you had to overcome, all the actual legal blockades for you to just like live your life, open a banking account, hold a job, get an education, like you had to overcome the actual government, like actual threat of being arrested or fined or imprisoned. There was even this was something I didn't realize people didn't know about. There was a time period, I want to say this was like during and after World War I, where black women could be fined or imprisoned if they didn't have a job. And it was because white women needed nannies and housekeepers. And so instead of, I don't know, like paying people more, incentivizing it, it literally was like, even if a black woman had a husband who was either in the military or well off to where they didn't have to work, they legally had to show that they were usefully employed, I think was the phrasing that was used, or they could be thrown in jail or imprisoned. So that is why you see so many black women celebrating like a soft life, because there was a period of time where it was illegal to do so. And while a lot of us may have not experienced that, we hear about these things from like our mothers and grandmothers. And so when I was on Facebook and, this young guy made a video about, basically he was explaining why it's unrealistic to expect modern day women to handle relationships the way our grandmothers did, for example. And what he was explaining was like, yeah, a lot of our grandmothers, they had to be in those relationships. Even if they wanted to leave, they couldn't, because, having kids out of wedlock or being divorced as a woman could prevent you from getting a job. It was already hard to get work as a woman anyway. Um, Having a line of credit, not happening. A bank account, owning a home, not happening. So there were so many barriers for them to like being independent or even leaving an abusive situation if that's what the case called for. Um, and so, yeah, it seems like they were just so committed and in love forever, they couldn't leave. They couldn't go nowhere. And what upset me about this was the reactions. People calling this guy a simp, being like, whose side are you on? And it's like, it's not about sides. This is history. These are things that really happen. Just like with Jackie Robinson, it's not about DI. This is history. These are things that really happened. And if you don't like that they happened, if it makes you uncomfortable, the answer isn't to erase it, because if you erase it, you just increase the odds that history might repeat itself. The way you handle that is you allow yourself to be educated so that we can learn lessons from those situations. So, like, for example, when it comes to women and understanding their plight and being independent and how that might color our perspective of relationships now, um it's like not wanting to learn that aspect of women's history. It's like, and I say this within the context that a lot of men look at their role in relationship to the women that they care about as like they're supposed to care for women, they're supposed to protect and provide for women. They see themselves as being expected to love and respect women. You can't do those things without understanding women's history and understanding what we go through, what our mothers and grandmothers might have gone through, and what they might have told us about that, right? Um, and so it's kind of like being given a car and somebody's like, "Hey, I need you to take care of this car." And you're like, "Okay, cool. What kind of car is it?" "I don't know." Okay, what kind of gas does it take? Like, is it regular unleaded premium?" "Mhm." What kind of tires should I put on it?" "Don't know." "But take care of it though." Like, how are you going to do that? You know nothing about this car. And so I feel like that's how a lot of men are with women, where it's like, yeah, I'm a protector, I'm a provider. I love and I respect women. And it's like, but you have you know nothing about our plight. You know nothing about what our grandmothers and our mothers have told us about men and our relationships. You just expect this shit to go a certain way. Um, so yeah, this all took a turn. I'm sorry. If y'all have any last minute like Cowboys questions, sports questions in general, this one from Jackie Robinson to DEI to women. My bad. Shit happens. Um, but yeah, y'all get what I'm saying on that front. So anyway, bringing it back to Jackie Robinson, like I said, I'm not going to pretend to be like a history expert or pretend like I had enough time to look up every contribution of Jackie Robinson today. There are people today who have done a much better job of that than I could, and I have retweeted those people, and I think there are a few more that I'm going to repost. Um, but my main point is that I just don't like seeing things like that be erased under the guise that it's divisive, because it should be inspirational to see someone overcome the odds, like their actual government being like, yeah, I know you want to serve your country, but also at the same time, fuck you because you're melanin. Like to see someone overcome that because they actually want to serve their country, to see someone overcome all the barriers that they had to overcome just to contribute to their community. Um, that should that should be inspiring, especially considering the fact that like these days we do have barriers to overcome, but they're not as what's the word? They're not as extreme. So if anything, we should be able to look at people like Jackie Robinson and say, like, okay, if he could come overcome all that, legal ramifications, abuse, assault, being mistreated by the very people that he was supposed to serve next to, right? Um, because one of the reasons that some people are saying that the article got taken down from the Department of Defense website is because the article included an anecdote, a story about him being on an army bus and being asked to move to the back of the bus, and he refused, and he was court-martialed, right? And so for whatever reason, people don't want that story to be told. Um, but for him to be like, not only am I going to overcome the situation, but I'm still going to serve my country in spite of that. That those are things that we should be inspired by, not be like, oh, we're so afraid of people learning history that we're going to hide it. We're going to be ashamed of it. So, um, be inspired by Jackie Robinson, be inspired by other Black athletes, be inspired by women athletes. Um, and let's just stop letting these things divide us. There are so many things about these stories that should inspire us in terms of perseverance, in terms of resilience, in terms of the power to change hearts and minds if we're willing to fight for what we feel like are the should be the ideals of this country. You know what I'm saying? So, and I don't know. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe people don't want hearts and minds to be changed. I have no idea. But it looks like y'all have no further questions. We've been here for just over an hour. It's going on 12:30. Like I said, I got to get up early. So, I'm gonna get out of here. If you are watching this after the fact, well, first, if you're watching this now, go ahead and hit me with a like, whether you're on Twitter or on YouTube. Hit me with a like. Make sure you're subscribed. make sure you turn those notifications on so that you can be notified about all my new posts. And if you're watching this after the fact and you're like, you know what, I want to hear Jazz talk about XYZ next week, go ahead and put it in the comments. I might see it. I might consider it for future content. But until next time, this has been a special episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm Jazz Monet, and I'm out.
You only think of us as a bitches when you intimidated. Put it that way. I think
people
that's
look at a woman and she's an
so
aggressive
sad.
woman who's out to get what she wants to get. You know what I'm saying? Ambitious, and they want to say, you know, when a male is assertive, it's what he wants. He's looked at as a strong male, but yet when I get it, you know, I'm a bitch.
Exactly.
And if that's what I gotta be,
Exactly.
to get what I want and to make it somewhere, then I'll just be that.